And welcome back to episode number 32 of Raise the Banner podcast. It's two of your three co-hosts today, Ben Dirth and myself, Matt Couture, as usual. Ben, besides being late, how you doing?
Well, you have to be fashionably late to be cool. I figured you'd know that by now. I am good. We have 2/3 of the usual menage a trois that we roll out week to week, so it'll be a
Yeah,
semi-quiet. But
JR has been a little MIA. He's got a lot going on right now, so he's
he's a working man who's pumping that iron.
yeah, that's to say the least. Uh, all right, yeah, no, let's jump into it. I want to do some Red Sox to start. Obviously, they are 2-2 after their first series in Seattle. They're in Oakland tonight for a 9:40 start. We're 4 games into this West Coast trip, and I already want to shoot myself, trying to get myself to stay up for these games.
Old man Couture can't stay up. I will admit I think I only made it opening day. I think I made it through most of Bayo's start before I finally
I made it through
passed out.
opening day. I made it through game 3. Game 2, I fell asleep, and then I made it through game 4. But it's like
I
it's pushing.
wish I had. I'm trying to think. So when did they open up? So what was I doing on Friday? Oh, we skied Friday. Last ski day of the year. So I was exhausted. And we'll get into it. But missed hell of a start from our boy Nick Pivetta.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the main topic. Obviously, like I said, they're 2-2. They faced arguably the best rotation in baseball, if not top 5, top 3.
I'll give you top 5.
You know, anytime you have to go through uh, Luis Castillo, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, and is it Brandon Miller? Is that correct?
Bryce Miller.
Bryce Miller. Yeah. Anytime you have to go through those 4 in a rotation in a series, that's a tough feat. I mean, those top 3 are all
legit studs.
Legit studs. I would think Kirby and Castillo are both, ones. Logan Gilbert's a 2 probably.
He's a legit 2 on most teams.
Yeah.
Bryce Miller's up and coming. For anybody who doesn't follow the college circuit, came out of Duke. He was drafted in 2022, I believe, or 2023. 21 or 22, I forget. Had a really good career at Duke. Oh, you know what? I stand corrected. I'm thinking of Bryce Jarvis, not Bryce Miller. That's my mistake.
Anyways,
Anyways,
yeah, they faced a gauntlet of
that's not who they
3.
That's not who they faced. I thought
what?
I could have sworn it was the kid from Duke, but doesn't matter.
Anyways, yeah, I mean they faced a gauntlet of pitchers. Obviously, anytime you go through that, stretch of pitches, it's going to be a tough series. Never mind the fact that they didn't have Devers for 2 of those games. They took opening day. They beat Luis Castillo. They won 6-4 in that game. Everybody in the starting lineup got a hit, which was really nice. On top of that, Bayo, I don't think he had his best stuff. He was a little bit wild, a little bit erratic, but his stuff is up in miles per hour as well, which is something that was noticeable. He's thrown a little bit harder. And as much as he was a little bit wild, he kind of worked around it in game 1. Obviously,
effectively wild, as we like to call it.
Yeah. Obviously, opening day, Tyler O'Neill extended his streak and set an MLB record for 5 straight opening day home runs, which is just kind of insane. Game 2, obviously they lost. That was Nick Pivetta. He threw a gem. I mean, I think it was it 1-0 that they lost that game?
Yeah, he went. I think it was 6 innings, 7 Ks.
Yeah, I mean they lost. Yeah, 1-0 that game.
It was 1-0.
And you couldn't ask for much more. The Devers was out. The bats just didn't hit. Game 3, excuse me. They lost 4-3. That was a tough one because it was 1-1. They put up 2 runs in the top of the 10th, 10th,
I'm
and
sorry.
then in the bottom of the 10th, the Kenley was not available, I guess, and Joel Rodriguez blew. I mean, some of it was kind of ticky tacky hits, but regardless, blew the lead, and they lost that game in the bottom of the 10th in a game that they very easily could be 3-1 right now.
Yes.
They should be 3-1 right now. That's a game obviously you look at and say, they 100% should have won that game. You go up 3-1 in the bottom of the 10th inning, you should win that every single time. Obviously, you're not going to, but
yeah, I would say 8 or 9 times out of 10 when you have a lead in extra innings.
And even the other game they lost 1-0. So obviously the big storyline right now is the pitching staff. They have been. I mean, if you could have drew up any type of I don't even want to say like any dream of what this pitching staff could be that is somewhat realistic, it would be what we've seen so far. And that's from the rotation and into the pen. Overall for the Sox, what are your thoughts on the first series, and what are you looking for, for this next 3-game set, I think, in Oakland? You're muted.
Sorry, thank you. So the series in Seattle, obviously opening day was good to get that win. I think if you really want to look at the ceiling for this team, I think the Mariners are the benchmark. I think it's a fair comp for 2024. The Mariners were 86, 87 wins last year, I think, right? Somewhere in there. They only missed postseason by a game. They would have. I know that they had more wins than the Diamondbacks, who got in as the last wild card team in the National League. They had 84 wins. So Mariners had 85, 86 wins, something like that. But that's kind of the benchmark for the Sox this year, in my opinion. That's kind of their ceiling, if you will. So to go in there and take 2 out of 3. I mean, obviously they have a pretty recently, more so because Luis Castillo started his career in the National League. But they've hit him pretty well since he went to Seattle. They beat up on him a little bit last year. He had a start at Fenway. I think he gave up like 4 or 5 runs in 5 innings. And there were some pretty hard hit balls in that game. So, not that Luis Castillo is a slouch. He's not. He's a legit ace on most any team in baseball, not named the Dodgers. But good to get that win. I thought big picture, the pitching staff was very much impressed me. We talked with Joey Capone last week about what this pitching staff really needed to do if the Red Sox were going to be competitive, and it's not going to happen, but if they can get what they got in Seattle out of their starting pitching on a semi-consistent basis throughout the course of the year, right? Not every game. Pivetta, I just looked at his numbers. Pavetta's not going to go out and go 6 innings, 1 run, 10 Ks, no walks. He's not doing that every start. That's his A game. But if you can get what you got starting pitching wise from, on a semi-consistent basis, I think the playoffs are absolutely within reach, especially with this offense. They very easily, obviously the bats go silent in game 2. Devers was the late scratch with the shoulder issue, which I guess they're not concerned is going to be a long-term thing. I haven't seen any lineup or report for tonight, but the belief was that he should be ready to go. He's playing. Okay. So, couple game absence, whatever, not a big deal. It's early. It's March/April now.
It's not uncommon for players early in the season to, as their bodies kind of are getting into the groove of the season to miss a game or 2.
So Tyler O'Neill, obviously Devers and Tyler O'Neill went Yabo opening day. It's good to see that. But I think the story of the series was their pitching. I don't think, if you had told me and I'm going to bring up the game logs, but if you had told me that the Red Sox were going to get those kind of starts out of those kind of performances out of their starters. Bayo, 5 innings, 2 earned, had a couple Ks. The pitch count was up, but again, he was having trouble finding the zone. I think he was sub 60% strikes, which is that's why you'll only go 5 innings. But if you had told me that you were going to get, and I want to say that of the 4 guys, he had the worst start. So if you had told me that 5 innings, 2 earned was the worst stat line of any starter in this series, if you had said that that was going to be the worst stat line, I'd be ecstatic. Pivetta goes 6 innings, 10 Ks. Cutter Crawford went 6 innings and 7 Ks. And was Whitlock 6 innings and 8 Ks?
Something like
that.
I think he went 6. Yeah.
I'd have to crunch the numbers, but that's as good an outcome this early in the year when pitching normally is slower than hitting early in seasons. Guys are, they're getting back into the groove out of spring training where they're not used to throwing more than 3, 4, 5 innings at most towards the end of spring training. So, the pitching is definitely the storyline. Chris Martin he looked insanely good. I think he pitched opening day. Kenley not being available kind of or was it game 2?
He pitched opening day and he pitched game 3.
Okay.
He pitched in the 9th to send it to extras.
So, Kenley not being available, it's kind of a disappointment. I think there's something going on there, kind of behind the scenes. I know what I mentioned last week that, if there was going to be like a bust kind of player, he was my pick for that because I just didn't think that he was invested. He doesn't seem all in. But again, like the offense will figure it out. I get they played in Seattle. It's March. It's April. It's going to be cold. And again, the starting pitching was the storyline for me.
Yeah, you kind of said it perfectly in the sense of if we could expect that, we would be in obviously phenomenal shape. If, based off what we expected from this rotation, if we even got, what we saw that this first 4 games is this is a tough analogy, but it's 100, percent better than what we could have realistically expected going into the season. We don't need not that we don't need that. We don't need that to be competitive. If they're 30% above what we expected from this rotation, this team will be a solid baseball team.
Yeah.
If they're better than 30%, then we talk about a team that could actually, get themselves into the playoffs and be a real contender. Obviously, a lot comes down to Brayan Bello and what his development is. He looked, I would say, solid. Some intrigue in his first start. Like I said, his mile per hour on basically all of his pitches across the board were up. Nick Pivetta, man, dude, he might have figured it out. He might be that guy that just works continuously at his game, and in the perfect time of his career, when he's getting ready for a payday next year, he might have figured it out in the second half last year. And this year, seriously, if he at this point, and I know it's 1 game, so I'm trying not to overreact. Based off what we saw last year, and then this first game with the new sweeper that he has, and his approach in general, he could be that number 2 guy that we were desperately looking for. And again, I'm trying not to be overreacting, declare him as a legit 2 or anything like that, but he's got me optimistic. Obviously, game 3, we went ahead, Cutter Crawford. Again, pitched great. He's a guy that a lot of people have been saying they think he can break out, and I agreed. He put up a 4.04 ERA. I think that's what we said last week, right? I think it was 4.04.
Yeah, it was just over 4. Yeah.
If he could, even if he just does that, that's solid. I remember seeing someone on the other day. They were saying, "Oh, this was before Montgomery signed. Oh, he's a league average pitcher. He's he's a mid to high 3 ERA, blah blah blah." I'm like, I don't think you know what average is in the MLB. The average ERA last year was a 4.34. 4.34. That's pretty high, first of all. So that's your average MLB pitcher. So if he's going to go out there, and I know it's a lot more than just ERA and stuff like that to evaluate a pitcher, but if he's a guy that's going to give you that low 4 ERA or high 3 ERA, you're in good shape. Garrett Whitlock, I mean, dude, he looked good. He looked good.
He did.
And so it's really going to be health for him. I think if he could stay healthy, like he has a chance to be a legit starting pitcher. And then Tanner Houck we'll see tonight, but I'm optimistic, obviously, based off how the first 4 went. The offense was a little bit disappointing. Obviously, Devers missed some time. Casas is coming out slow. Story was slow. He had a couple hits last night, but he was a little bit slow the first 3 games. But overall, I mean, like I said, they could very easily be 3-1 right now. They're playing arguably the worst team in baseball these next 3 games. They should win. They should win minimum 2. And you'll go into where are they? Are they San Francisco after this, or LA
Cleveland.
Angels?
Cleveland.
No, they don't go to Cleveland after this, do they?
Yeah, I think because it's 3 series before the home opener. I'm pretty sure. I'll double check.
Thursday. They're off Thursday. No, yeah, then they have the Angels.
Is the Angels? It's Angels then Cleveland.
I don't know, Angels.
Pretty sure, or is Cleveland the home series?
They open up against Baltimore.
I know.
I don't think they play Cleveland. They don't.
I'm sorry. Cleveland is after the Angels. Marathon Monday week.
Yeah. All right. So that's after the homestand.
Yeah. No,
that's the beginning of the homestand.
That's the end of the end of the homestand is 4 against Cleveland. But yeah. So
anyways, they go into the. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the A's series. I was just gonna reiterate. I think that they have to win 2 out of 3. I mean, you have Crawford going tonight. You have Bayo tomorrow. Pivetta. I'm lost my days of the week. Wednesday. So, if you can steal a game today, anytime you can steal a game, like it's the MLB. I get Oakland is pretty bad, but anytime you can quote unquote steal a game with your number 5 starter, then you can roll right into Bayo and Pivetta, who hopefully should dominate. If they can go, minimum 2 out of 3, I think that's kind of what you need to do. But I mean, depending on how today goes, like if they play well and they just lose a competitive game, this, it's like, it is what it is. It's Major League Baseball. As bad as some teams are.
They get 6 games here. So like, and the Angels suck too. Like they lost Ohtani. They suck. Whether, no matter how much they want to admit it, and they should do right by Mike Trout and kind of get rid of him, but that's another story. So they get 6 games here before they go home. If they can win 4, if they can go 4-2, they go home being 6-4. Like you go into that homestand, and in what was been seen as what it's going to be like a gloomy season. Like, all right, you start the season 6-4. You got some optimism going into the home opener against Baltimore. At that point, thank the Lord that we'll be done with this West Coast trip already at that point. But yeah, we'll have home opener on, I think it's the 9th. It's a 2:00 game.
Tuesday the 9th.
Yeah, so 2 p.m. game. Hopefully Bell is not pitching that game.
He is.
Is he?
Yeah, so tonight is Tanner Houck, and then you have tomorrow is Bayo, Wednesday Pivetta, Thursday off day. Then you have Crawford Friday, Whitlock Saturday, Houck on Sunday, which lines up so that you get Bayo, Pivetta, and Crawford for the Baltimore series. It just means, you're gonna get a good pitching matchup because Baltimore's gonna be throwing Corbin Burns.
Yeah. So Bayo is basically, I just say that because of Bayo's like day troubles that he's had historically. But hopefully, let's see if he can get over that this year in year 2. Well, kind of year 3 for him. But like I said, big picture, the rotation's been impressive. The bullpen's been pretty good. Weiser why is that how you say his name? Weiser.
Weisert. I'm not sure. His
Yeah,
his sweeper got some
Weiser.
attention from from Pitching Ninja.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, I sent that to you. Yeah, I mean he looks pretty impressive. Um, the bullpen as a whole, Chris Martin looks pretty good. Rodriguez is the shaky piece. But Kenley, if he can get healthy in the one appearance that he did make, he looked pretty good. I'm hopeful for this rotation so far. We'll see obviously how that goes. The little bit of question marks, a little bit come offensively. Like I said in the last episode, the biggest wild card to this team, I think, is Trevor Story. He was dynamite defensively, but he needs to, without a doubt, hit better. I think he had 3 hits in that series, which obviously isn't the end of the world. It's the first 4 games, but
Right.
like if this lineup wants that jolt in the middle of the lineup to replace what Justin Turner put out, they're going to need Story to hit pretty well. It didn't help that Casas had a really rough start to the season.
Yeah. So
What were your
while
thoughts? What were your thoughts in the first 4 games from? Well, I think he played 3 from Rafaela.
Rafaela specifically,
Yeah,
I mean, he showed that the defense is certainly probably his best tool. He didn't really, I don't recall him making
he had that triple.
any waves. I was going to say base paths, but yeah, he had was it a 2 RBI triple in the opener?
Yeah, well, it was the ball down the left field line that
Oh
had
yeah,
really.
it was that's right. I remember that one. It was the hustle triple where he just, I guess I didn't see the angle on replay. But I mean, obviously the play's in front of him, and I don't know if the left fielder just didn't play the ball correctly, or if he bobbled it, or if the ball got stuck. But he went into second base being perfectly content with a double and looked up and saw that the guy didn't have the ball yet and decided to keep on going. I didn't see on replay what exactly happened in left, but yeah, the hustle triple was great. He had, I think he had a diving play in center, which was really, really good. Obviously, we know that he's a plus defender in center field. Really good speed. Haven't seen him get a chance to really run on the bases yet. And obviously, it's only been 4 games. But I mean, I think you're seeing why the Red Sox didn't really have much of a choice in keeping him on the roster out of spring training. I figured with the way that they're approaching this season, and that they're playing it kind of for the long haul, that it made sense to send him down to AAA, call him up. I forget when the deadline is, but if you call him up after, I think it's 15 games, then you delay the start of his service clock another year, and where that's kind of their plan anyway. I figured he wasn't going to make it out of spring training because of that, but you're seeing why they probably didn't have a reason to send him down. You're going to get elite defense. He's fast, smart base runner, which is what they need. There's just been too many years of just dumb base running plays from this team. But yeah, I mean, impressive so far. I mean, I think the bat will come along a little bit. It's not his strong suit. He'll hit for respectable average, and if he gets into that 13 to 15 homer range, I kind of think that's really where he's at this point in his career. He's just not built for power, but for a guy his size, if he can hit 15 or so home runs, then good. But I mean, I've been impressed with him so far, and hopefully he just keeps it up.
Yeah, I mean, he's an electric piece that this team kind of needs, and if he can be, I guess, what people hope he can be, then that's going to be a major bonus to this lineup, to defensively. I mean, just based off last year, obviously we dealt with a lot of defensive issues, especially at shortstop, even in the outfield. Duran was a little shaky in center field as a whole. He was improved, but a little shaky. You're now putting a Gold Glove shortstop and a potential Gold Glove center fielder into the mix. That alone, that's going to improve this team. I mean, we've seen it. We saw from Trevor Story just in this series,
Yeah.
some of the plays that he can make, consistency. So you're going to see a shortstop position that went from, I mean, it kind of cost us a few games early in the season last year to it's going to save some games.
Yeah, and I think their defense up the middle is really, really good. Still some question marks at second base because I mean, obviously Vaughn Grissom's hurt, so it's just kind of waited out until he comes back. But if they can just be respectable a second until Grissom comes back, then they'll be in really good shape. But once Grissom comes back, I think when you talk about your defense up the middle defensively, they're one of the top teams in baseball when you talk about up the middle defense.
Oh, I mean, most certainly. We'll see what Grissom is. At the moment, Emmanuel Valdez is, holy shit, as shaky as can be. If that dude could just like figure it out and be serviceable defensively, his bat is, first of all, it's wildly similar to Juan Soto as a swing, but obviously not to that level. But I mean, his bat can be kind of legit. I think he can be that guy that hits in, the mid 250s, 260s with a little bit of pop. And I don't know if he's ever going to be, a top of the order guy. But
No,
like I think his back is a legit like number 7 bat in this league.
Yeah,
And
I would say the 6 holes probably his ceiling.
Yeah, so like and that's fine in the long term. It's just like if he needs to be serviceable defensively.
Yeah, I mean, there's not. I mean, I'd have to look. I mean, how many second basemen across baseball are hitting in premier spots in the lineup? It's probably not many. Obviously you've got Jose Altuve, who I know is, he's entering probably the end of the prime years of his career. He's been a leadoff 2-3 hitter for a long time, but you don't see many second basemen in baseball hit in really high impact spots in the lineup. Like obviously Pedroia did it here for a long, long time. But like, you could probably count on one hand and again, I'd have to go look, but I'm guessing you could probably count on one hand how many second basemen across baseball hit in premier spots in the lineup. So, if he can play serviceable defense and be a 6 or 7 hitter, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And he did have, if I'm not mistaken, he had a 3-run home run in the final game of that Seattle series, correct?
Yeah. Oh, he made an impact on this first series. It's going to be interesting to see when Grissom gets back, how they play it out. I don't know if they're going to keep him because do you get rid of Pablo Reyes? Like what do you do there? I think that they'll probably still send him back to the minors, Valdez, that is.
Yeah, is Reyes? Does he have options to go back down to the minors?
I don't think so.
I didn't think so. I know Valdez does.
Yeah, and so that's part of it. They can send Valdez back down to the minors, and really like it's his bat's ready to the point where he can be a above or even just average overall bat in the majors. His defense needs to improve. Devers obviously had a homer in opening game, and then he had a double, I think, in the same game. Yeah, in the same game.
Yeah, he went 2. Yeah, because he didn't play in the final 3 games. He went 2 for 4 with a double and the 2-run home run.
Yeah, so I'm not really worried about Devers at all. He looked good. In the first game, he'll once he shakes his shoulder injury, he'll be fine. Abreu had a rough start to the series. Do people give him time? Like give him time. He's still a very young player. Casas looked like a disaster the first few weeks of the season, first like 6 weeks of the season last year before he finally figured it out. And we have the luxury in the outfield where like he can work through that day to day and get himself back on track without him having, relying on him game to game to be a producer. We'll see what he does, but just give him some time. I'm not really worried about him. And then finally, it's Yoshida. I mean, we'll see. Like he's had a few hits. He had a nice base hit to I think it took the lead in game 3. We'll see how he does long term. Obviously, we know endurance and fatigue was an issue last year. We'll see if being a DH helps that. I would imagine it does, and a little bit more preparation for him himself. But as a whole, we've kind of gone it over it all. They look pretty solid, certainly better than I think anybody could have hoped for. After one series, and again, it's one series, and we'll take it as it goes. But I mean, I'm pretty happy about the first series, regardless, even though we only split it.
Yeah, I mean, it's early on, and you just have to hope that that the offense is going to hit. I think we talked about this, right? Where it really was going to come down to pitching. So again, give it time. It's still early, but I would expect the offense to probably be just fine. And we'll see what happens. Sorry, I was also just looking up the lineup for tonight.
Yeah, but let's transition. I want to do a little bit of Patriots talk. I was going to do some Bruins, but JR unfortunately couldn't make it, kind of semi last minute. But the New England Patriots. Obviously, a report came out today from Tony Pauline, Pauline, something like that.
Sounds right.
Yeah, he's a pretty credible NFL reporter. He said the talk around the pro day circuit was the Patriots were interested in Elliot Wolf. Were interested in JJ McCarthy. What are your I know we've talked personally about JJ McCarthy. Let's say Drake May goes number 2. What are you doing? Are you going with Daniels? Are you going with McCarthy? What are your thoughts overall on JJ McCarthy?
So the thing with JJ, I've never the thing with McCarthy for me, not that I've ever not liked him, it's just nothing I've seen from on-field like game film made me ever say like wow. So there's nothing that I love about JJ, and not to say that there's nothing to love, right? I just feel that based on the system that was run in Michigan, where heavy run game, they had 2 guys, Johnson and Corum, who were dynamite running backs out of the backfield. Stout defense. They averaged, I think, 10 points allowed per game last year, something crazy like that. When you have a team like that, and you posted on social media about this, about how in 2023 he never faced a deficit at halftime, and something like, what was it, 60 or 70% of his throwing attempts came in the first half of games this year, something crazy like that. So the thing with JJ is I think he has a really high floor. I just don't know what his ceiling is, because with the system that was run, not that I don't think he was capable of doing it, but because of the system, they didn't need to rely on him to win the game with his arm almost ever. So that's just, there's still some questions. So I mean, it's hard on the outside, right? Like, we're not interviewing JJ McCarthy. Like, we're not that cool. Maybe someday you'll see us at the NFL Combine, with an RTB microphone in our hands, going, who knows,
maybe JJ McCarthy's like JJ McCarthy Jr.
Yeah, JJ's son. So in 30 years, but obviously we're not interviewing the guy. We're not, talking to him, after workouts. So it's really hard to know, like, what's going on from the neck up with him. I try not to pay too much attention to like big picture macro stuff at combines and pro days. Like, that's the time to look at footwork, um, mechanical things with the arm, mechanical things with the hips and the shoulders. But I mean, aside from the fact that we probably couldn't throw the ball 60 yards, you or I could go out there and throw to wide open wide receivers and throw bullets on 5-yard slants. That's really why I don't put a ton of stock into certain parts of the combine and pro days, right? Because you're throwing to wide open guys who can adjust in any way, shape, or form, because there's not a player out there trying to keep him from catching the ball. So that's why, again, there's just nothing on the other side of the equal sign for me with McCarthy. I think that his floor is probably the second highest in the draft at quarterback to me. I would say that Caleb Williams' floor is probably higher. But I would say that if you look at the other guys, he probably has the second highest floor. I think he has the lowest ceiling of the top 4 guys. I think that he has a higher ceiling than, I mean, if you look at like the next group of quarterbacks, which is a combination of Penix and Nix and Rattler, maybe Pratt to a degree. I would say that Penix is the only one that has a higher ceiling. So it's because you're just basing that off of like, what does the guy look like, and what did you see at the combine? Like, basing it off of that. So, I mean, if I'm sitting there at 3 and Drake May goes 2, I really don't know. I mean, there's something to be said. Michigan runs a pro style offense, whereas other teams don't. I don't know how much stock I put into that because, I mean, Patrick Mahomes ran a wide open spread offense at Texas Tech, and he's the best quarterback in the league. So I don't think the pro style offense really carries the weight that it used to. I mean, Jimmy Clausen ran a pro style offense at Notre Dame, and it was like, oh my God, like Jimmy Clausen, pro style offense, he's the guy you got to go get in the draft. And I forget what year he was drafted, and there's probably a good reason for it because he amounted to nothing. So guys that come out of pro style offenses don't translate like people want to say they do. Whereas guys that come from wide open spread offenses may translate. It all depends on other intangibles. I mean, I go back and forth. Daniels' ceiling to me is super high, but I feel like when you look at certain parts of his game where, and again, was it by design or not, he didn't really throw a ton over the middle. For a guy who's 6'4", he is on the smaller side. When you look at other guys around the league, when you comp his size, he's a little taller than Lamar, but they're basically the same build. I think Lamar's 6'2", whereas Daniels is 6'4", but they're roughly the same weight. So, I mean, my gut tells me probably Daniels because I think he has more upside. His ceiling is a little higher, but because there's too many unknowns with McCarthy, I wouldn't be that disappointed if the Pats took him over Daniels because obviously they're the ones that met with him. He had glowing reviews about the whole operation when he met with them after his pro day. If they went McCarthy over Daniels, I probably wouldn't hate it because obviously they're the ones talking to him and getting to know him as a person, as a player. And, it's tough just because there's not a lot of game film on him to really make a really hardened decision one way or the other.
Yeah. I mean, I talked about it with Washington and what they could do. And I've always kind of said that they could I lean at them taking Daniels because Daniels is a little bit more pro ready. And, in Washington, you have a first time GM who can't afford to miss. I call him a last chance head coach in Dan Quinn, meaning if he fails here, he's probably not going to get another chance.
Probably not.
And then you got Kingsbury who wants to make a name for himself. So I always felt like Daniels is a little bit safer because Drake May, he does have a little bit more development to go. Personally, I would take May if I was the Commanders, and I would take May if I was the Patriots. The best way I kind of describe JJ McCarthy is, and someone asked me today, and I kind of came up with it. I think he's like, besides Caleb, and I would say even when you look past the on-field things, beyond the on-field things, he might be the cleanest prospect. Doesn't mean the best prospect or the highest ceiling prospect. I think he might be the cleanest prospect in the draft. And not that it's by a lot or anything like that, but I think it's an overwhelming opinion that he has, the it factor that you want in a QB. He's athletic. He's pretty accurate. He's got a pretty good arm. He's smart inside the pocket. He can escape outside the pocket. He can move pretty well down, running the ball, being a mobile QB. They didn't ask him to do a lot. And I think that there's a level, I know there's a level of dislike for McCarthy because of things that really aren't his fault. Like, is it his fault that the Michigan Wolverines blew every team out and they didn't really need him to be, that comeback guy all the time? Like, how much are we going to blame him for that? So while I do understand the concept that, we haven't seen a lot from him, at the same time, a lot of it, that's not really his fault. So you have to look a little bit deeper into who he is. And so I know you kind of mentioned it, but I want to kind of just run through it again. He had a 28-1 record in college. 28-1. That's, pretty good. of those times, 29 games, they trailed at halftime twice. Throughout 29 games, they trailed in the second half twice. In 2023, they did not trail in the second half. In the games that he did have deficits, Rutgers 2022, they trailed 17-14. They won 52-17. 52-17. I know it's Rutgers, but Illinois, they trailed 17-10 into the fourth quarter. They won 19-17. Again, there you go. Ohio State 2022, they trailed 20-17 at halftime. They won 45-23. Put up 25 points in the second half against Ohio State, your biggest rival, top 10 school, Ohio State. TCU game, semifinals, the one loss. They trailed 21-6 into their halftime. They lost 51-45. They lost. They also put up 39 points in the second half. So you look in those two games, the Ohio State game and the TCU game, because he quite literally didn't have to be the comeback guy in 2023. They didn't trail in the second half at all. Those two games were not arguably, they were the two biggest games in 2022 that they had. And he went up and he put 25 points up in the second half against Ohio State and 39 points up in the second half against TCU. So, while we look at his numbers and say, okay, he hasn't been asked to do a ton, or he doesn't have the second half performances you kind of look for in a QB. Like in the times that they have needed him, he's shown up for the most part. And so I get the concept. You're a little bit unknown. And obviously we don't get to, like you said, like sit down and talk to JJ personally and get to know him. But I think he might be the cleanest prospect on and off the field. He gets it. I think you're going to go in, and if you draft him, you're going to say, I think that the minimum I'm going to get from this guy is a solid middle of the pack QB, like starter, like middle of the pack guy. Does that make him my QB, QB1 or even QB2? No, because I think the ceilings of Drake May and Caleb Williams are higher. And in the end, if you're taking a top 3 pick, I think you should go.
Yeah.
You got to balance things, right? Obviously, like you don't take a huge wild card that could be a 50-50 chance, could be a bust and could be a star. But like you got to lean upside. And that's always been why even Daniels, the Daniels to May discussion is, I think Daniels is a little bit safer, but I think May's upside is higher. So, I've been battling it. I mentioned you today. I think McCarthy might be moving into my QB3. I like Daniels, but I don't love his frame. I think that is a dangerous weight to be playing at. I think he weighed in at 210, which is realistically him probably bulking. Like he probably put on 5 to 10 pounds for that pro day. And maybe he can bulk up and play at a higher weight in the NFL. But I mean, he's going to be 24, or he just turned 24. He's already 24 years old.
He's 3. He's 23. He's 23.
20. Yeah,
he turned 23 in December.
All right, so he's already 23 years old. Oh, it's Penix that's 24. Excuse me.
Penix is the elder. Well,
and that's another
Spencer
topic.
Rattler feels like he's been around for 8 years. He feels like the Brandon Weeden of this draft, who was a 28-year-old rookie. The one thing I will say though is, so here's the thing. If you want to talk about build,
wait, quick side note. Jay Smitty wants to make his thoughts clear. Daniel sucks. McCarthy is a QB1. There you go.
Okay. So the thing about, if you want to talk about QB3, like I would still lean Daniels because I think the upside is there more so than JJ. I mean, JJ is essentially, he's an inch shorter than Daniels. McCarthy's 6'3". He weighed in at 197. So arguably the same build with less running ability. So like that's why I say the upside on Daniels is higher. because I think you get a little bit more of dynamic playmaking out of Daniels than you do out of McCarthy. I would say, however, your floor with JJ is higher than it is than you get with Daniels. And it all depends on the system. I mean, you touched on Daniels possibly number 2 to the Commanders at
He fits their system. He fits Kingsbury's.
yeah, Kingsbury had Caleb Williams. He wasn't the OC. He was like the QB coach / something else at USC, quality control analyst or something. I don't know what he was.
Yeah.
But he was with Caleb. So I think
He was
Daniels
with Kyler and Mahomes prior to that. So
right. So that Daniels fits the mold. Although I mean, I say that, but I would say that based on like overall skill set, call me crazy, but I think that Drake May is closer to that than you think.
I would, no, I agree. I don't think Drake May is far off from like that. Drake May is mobile enough to fit that scheme. I would say realistically, I think JJ McCarthy is like an outstanding fit for Washington's, Kingsbury system.
I mean, the thing about McCarthy's more of like he can be mobile when he extends plays, but he's not gonna take off and run like Drake May or Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams would.
Definitely not like Daniels. Daniels is.
I mean, if you look at and I should do. I'm gonna look up.
I would say McCarthy is almost just as mobile as Drake May is.
So JJ McCarthy. So JJ McCarthy last year, 64 carries for 202 yards. I wouldn't like that's not Drake May, in my opinion.
But Drake May, like we've also talked about, Drake May's numbers all around are going to be higher than JJ's because they asked him to do more.
Yeah,
needed to do more.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
So everything's. I would say Drake May's built a little bit more bulkier to be a runner, but I think McCarthy has more than enough mobility to be, a pretty mobile QB. Are you going to be designing runs for him and like doing RPOs where you're designing him to run the ball during plays? Probably not much. But you're not gonna really be doing that much with Drake May either. You only do that with guys like, Jaden Daniels, who was like, and again, that's part of it for Daniels for me, is a huge aspect of what's attractive is his legs and mobility, and that works to an extent. But I'm just worried about his size, and I know it works for Lamar, but we've talked like. For as many Lamars, there's a lot of guys that just can't withstand the NFL game playing that small. Jared's chiming in. So I think if JJ can find some consistency as a game, he's a franchise QB. Yeah, I think the sky is pretty. I'm probably a little bit higher on McCarthy's ceiling than you are. Not by much. I just think that there is a level of floor with McCarthy that is very attractive.
I would agree there.
And you brought up the Alex Smith comp, off the pod, and I would say that's relatively close, a little bit more mobile, athletic version, and not that Alex Smith wasn't.
No,
but could move a little bit.
I would say physical talent. McCarthy's got a little bit more, but like he looks like Alex Smith to me.
Yeah, a little bit. I've seen like a little bit more mobile Jared Goff. And I think people put that in a bad way. I mean, this version of Jared Goff is pretty damn good.
I mean, he was he was a number 1 pick for a reason.
Yeah, and so I don't like people keep saying like Jared Goff as if it's like some big insult type of thing. And while like Jared Goff maybe hasn't lived up to the like number 1 pick worthy, this version of Jared Goff, and again, like he's in Detroit, he's in a good situation, they got good weapons, like he's pretty good. And if you're saying a more mobile version, a guy that can get outside the pocket, extend plays, make some more plays on the run, and with his legs, like that's not really a bad thing.
No, not at
And
all.
people kind of, so like if you talk about like, all right, if we end up with a more mobile version of what Jared Goff was this year, that's pretty good. I think I think most people would feel like that was a pretty solid pick.
Yeah,
Like, would you agree? Like,
I would agree. And I want to amend a prior statement. So JJ's combine like measurement, he measured in at 6'2" and a half, 220. So he put on 20 pounds from from like weigh-in days, early part of Michigan to the combine. So he put on 20 pounds in 6 months, give or
yeah.
take.
And Jared's still listening. Jared Goff is a game changer. That's all you need in a QB in the NFL. He's not perfect, but if he can make big plays when it matters and is consistent, it's a no-brainer. Yeah, and that's kind of really what it comes down to. Like, I think in the reason why I think Drake May is my QB2, because I think that upside is higher than JJ. But when you balance Daniels versus McCarthy, and it's neck and neck for me, I think Daniels has a slightly higher ceiling, but McCarthy has I would say, a little bit more than slightly higher floor. So I'm saying, okay, if I had the number 3 pick, it would be a brutal decision if it comes between both of them. But like, I might lean McCarthy for the Patriots. We've talked about all what they bring to the table. It's also the New England fan base. It's the New England weather. When we talk about Daniels has a decent arm. I think he can make most throws, but he's not a guy that is gonna like amaze you with his arm. McCarthy has a rocket. He can hit at any and every throw. From a velocity standpoint, something that was the complete opposite of what we've had in New England. On top of that, he played in Michigan. Like, he played in cold weather. He played, and not that LSU was in a big atmosphere, because obviously that is too. But he played in the Michigan, atmosphere for the last few years. He was dominant. Record wise, he was a winner, and then he showed up in the Ohio State game as well. So again, it's not like a big gap. It's a minute gap at the moment for me. But like, when I think I'm going to do one more QB rankings, and I think JJ might be my QB3. I'm talking myself into it.
Yeah. Well, and I try not to put a ton of stock into the weather thing, because I think that you can find exceptions to almost anything, right? I mean, Patrick Mahomes did not have he played in Texas, and he goes to Kansas City, and he's and the only home playoff losses he has are in the 2018 AFC Championship game to the Patriots, and then in the 2020 AFC title game to the Bengals, and then Super Bowl 55 are his only playoff losses in his career. So, and now granted, we're talking about the greatest quarterback on the planet right now. So I don't know as if like the weather thing really factors in. I think that it does if you find where, like, if Jaden Daniels is not mentally tough, that's where that comes into play.
Yeah, but
Whereas
part
I
of
know
it, the
that
difference with Mahomes though, is Mahomes had a bigger arm. He's built more physically. Like,
sure,
so
but
that's part of it with
so
Daniels
so
is
what because he has more body mass, he insulates better.
no, but he has a bigger arm and can handle it's more difficult to throw in cold weather
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's
than
kind of
it
the
is.
and we talked about the knock on Daniels, right? Is he didn't throw a ton between the numbers. And I know, like, one of the things I thought was interesting is after I was reading up on like post combine profile thing, the strengths and weaknesses for the quarterbacks, and one of the things that came out about Daniels after his pro day is that the scouts that watched him felt he lacked like top end ball speed on his
Yeah,
throws. That it wasn't that he couldn't get it there. It's just that like his fastball isn't as good as other people's fastball. That he's got the arm strength to throw it 60 yards. But
Yeah,
that when you talk about like when you have to throw that, 8-yard out route and it has to get there at, when you got to throw it, I mean, I'll use a baseball analogy, but when you got to throw your 100-mile-an-hour fastball on an out route because you have to beat the best corners in the game, he doesn't have that. He has
I think realistically,
he's
like
got
McCarthy got clocked in at he hit 61 on the radar at the combine. Is he hitting 61 in every throw? No, but on that out route, like if he's hitting
right.
high 50s or maybe 60 on a lot of these throws, and Daniels is hitting 55, 56, maybe 57. Like again, is it a big difference? No, and Daniels has I would say an average arm, maybe a little bit below velocity wise. It's certainly not what Mac was. That was my biggest gripe with Mac, even after he was drafted, was people's refusal to admit that he had a weak velocity arm.
Yeah, the issue with Mac was not necessarily getting the ball to a certain spot. It's how quickly it would get there.
Yeah, like we saw, he could make, especially in college, he showed that he could make most every throw. It was like you said, like an out route, and you need to get it there, or maybe you're a millisecond behind, and you need to fucking rip it. He's not able to do that.
Yeah, he lacked that ability.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm talking about, like, with Daniels, is his arm in the New England weather is a minor worry. It's not like he's coming off my draft board because of it.
Yeah, I mean it certainly, it certainly shows that JJ is definitely creeping up into that top 3 conversation. We don't have to dive down the rabbit hole, but I strongly think that all 4 quarterbacks are gone before the Giants pick at 6. Whether the Giants move up or not, but I think all 4 quarterbacks are gone by the 6th pick.
Yeah, Daniel Jeremiah said today that he thinks that all 4 will be gone in the top 4, which would theoretically mean he fully thinks that Arizona will trade out of the 4th pick. And I think that they probably will, because Arizona, and I've said this conversation with people about the Marvin Harrison at number 3. Marvin Harrison is a great wide receiver prospect, obviously.
Yeah.
If Minnesota comes and offers 11, 23 in a second, you know what I mean, for number 4,
you take it before they stop talking about it.
Yeah, you're probably, like, you gotta probably take that deal. And again,
I don't think it's probably. I think you have to, because think about what Arizona needs, right? You could theoretically, depending on how you want to do it, if you trade for, and I'm not going to talk about any potential future assets, but in order to go from 11 to 4, you're probably giving up 11 and 23. Is it possible that you don't? Sure. Could they give up, could they do a pick swap where it's 11 for 4 and then you get their first rounders for the next 2 years, which is essentially the same trade that the 49ers made with the Dolphins in 2021. They traded 12 for 3 and they gave up a 2022 and a 2023 first, in addition to the pick swap. So that's probably roughly the comp, right? Maybe it's, but whatever, right? Let's just say it's 11 and 23. You can get probably the 2nd or 3rd best tackle at worst at 11. And
they need a lot defensively. Like, right. Arizona needs everything. There's nothing that Arizona doesn't need, except maybe a left tackle.
Yeah, and if Arizona can have 3 first-round picks, I don't think,
and a high 2nd.
And and probably a future first, or a really, like, probably a, if Minnesota's getting if Minnesota moves up and say they take JJ McCarthy, I think that with the offense around them, Minnesota, it may be a mid first or mid second if it ends up, I think that they're kind of middle of the pack with competency at the quarterback position. I just don't know how Arizona says no to that kind of deal, because you can do anything you want, because you'd have picks 11, 23, and 27, and then You know, and then
See,
who knows? Now you have the flexibility where if a team calls, you can trade out of 27, add more picks, and you essentially trade instead of having 4 and 27, you have 11 and 23, and you've added extra assets to keep either building around, build around Kyler and build for the future because they're not going to be good again this year anyway.
yeah. Well, I'll say if Minnesota's just offering 11 and 23, I might not do it.
Well, no,
Because
I wasn't saying that was the package. I just
yeah. I'm
I
just saying if they're just offering those two, because at that point I say like I think I might rather Marvin Harrison than 11 and 23. Now, if they add like a future second and maybe and even just maybe a future second, all right, I think it gets over that scale of like you said, like trade back to 11. You could get, I mean, 11. You're looking at Verse Latu, one of the stud corners that you can take at 23. Then you can go get. I don't think Brian Thomas will be there, but like you can get a Donnie Mitchell,
you can
Lad
definitely
McConkey.
you can definitely get AD Mitchell. And if you really love Brian Thomas Jr., you can partner. You can pair 23 with another asset and move up. We talked about.
Or if you really love him, you could take him at 11. I think he's going
God.
top 20. So like while 11 might be a touch too high for him, in a perfect exact value thing, I think he's probably going to go top 20. So
yeah, but I mean, if you're at 23, and I'm just going to bring up the draft board real quick,
yeah, you can pair 23 with
right. If you were to do 20, because you figure the first it's tough, right? Like I think the ceiling for Brian Thomas Jr. is the Colts at 15. I think they have bigger needs, but it wouldn't really shock me if they took him at 15. I don't see him going any earlier than that. I mean,
I like Jacksonville at 17 as a good spot.
Yeah, Jacksonville at 17 because they don't have Calvin Ridley. But like, if you were to trade the 23rd overall pick and get, and then add it, I mean, to go from 23 to 16 would probably cost you what? A third?
A third and a fourth, maybe.
Yeah,
a third and a fifth.
Or even, or better yet, whatever, if you get a second round pick from Minnesota, trade a future second with 23 and you can move up and you can go get Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, and at that point you traded 4. So let's just say you got 11, 23 in a future second, and then you traded 23 in the future second to go up to 16. Like trading number 4 for the 11th and 16th pick is pretty reasonable. And you can turn if you turn Marvin Harrison into let's just say Mitchell, the guy from Toledo, I forget his first name, Cole Wynn.
Quinyon Mitchell.
Quinyon Mitchell, who is I think either cornerback 1 or cornerback 2 in this draft. And then you went at 16, you took Brian Thomas Jr. Like, okay. At that point, you added 2 guys that could help. And then you still got 27. And at 27, they could go literally any direction at 27. The good thing about Arizona, and we're a little bit off topic, is even if they don't make the trade, they can really go best available. Because there's like really no position where they're just like, that doesn't make any sense other than maybe QB, maybe left tackle.
I mean, they could go, they could probably get any defensive lineman they want at 27.
Any defensive player they wanted. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
you figure if they had already taken a corner at 11.
Oh, yeah.
And then they go corner at 11, they go Quinyon Mitchell at 11. They go Adonai Mitchell at 23. Then they can go get, Newton. They can go get an edge rusher. They can go get
Chop Robinson. Yeah.
Like you have any pick, you probably the only 2 guys you probably can't get are probably Latu or Byron Murphy are probably the only 2 defensive linemen you wouldn't have at your disposal at 27 unless something crazy happens.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, they could go. I could see a scenario where they traded back. They go Mitchell at 11. They go Brian Thomas Jr. Let's just say Adonai Mitchell at 23. And fuck it. go like Ladd McConkey at 27. They don't have anything for receivers.
No, but
That-
they need enough help elsewhere. But I mean, yeah, it is.
no, but
But I
if
mean,
20, like I said, they have the opportunity to go best available. So if they, they have those guys, like it's not like, drafting two guys early is gonna hurt their team, or they have a log jam at receiver. I mean, who's their best fucking receiver right now?
probably Rondale Moore.
No, they traded him.
Oh
He
yeah,
gets
that's
sent to
right.
Atlanta. I don't know.
Uh,
Dortch? Is it Dortch? Oh, it's Michael Wilson.
oh yeah. You could do Michael
Like
Wilson.
that, you know what I mean? You could put Michael Wilson on the inside and have McConkey and Mitchell on the outside. Like they could go anywhere. But anyways, back to back to the Patriots and the number 3 pick. I like May is still unmatched. There's no question for me. Still my top option, assuming Caleb goes 1. And if May's there at 3. But like I think that McCarthy might be a better fit in New England than Jaden Daniels. I don't have an issue saying that. Daniels is a really intriguing prospect. He's got a lot to like about his game, but I think in terms for the Patriots, I think McCarthy might be a better fit than Jaden Daniels. And I'll kind of leave it at that, to say the least, or the most.
I hear you. So real quick, just to throw it out there, and we'll put a button on the or a bow, whatever you want to call it, on the Arizona trading the number 4 pick. They cannot get a second round pick from Minnesota because Minnesota does not own a second round pick next year. So in all likelihood, if
they
they're
could trade 26.
I mean, at that point, I'd be like, no, I want a 20. At that point, if you're offering me a pick in 26, I want a first rounder, not a second rounder.
Maybe, or maybe they give a first and you give them a third round back or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's if you're Arizona and you're getting over 2 firsts offered for 4, I think you have to very much consider it at the very least, if not do it.
Yeah.
The one other Patriots topic I wanted to jump on is, let's just say that they go QB at 3, whether it's McCarthy, Daniels, May, whatever. And McConkey and Mitchell are both gone at 34. What would, I know that this is kind of a general statement question, but what if they're both gone at 34? Where are you focusing on?
Offensive line.
Do you have, like, is there a specific tackle in that range that you're like gung ho about, that you really like? I know we've talked about it, and I think that the most likely scenario is that I want them to trade back from 34. I think there's so much talent in round 2 or 3.
Yeah, I would want to theoretically trade back. I mean, if you don't get a deal that is worth moving off of the 34th pick, then I think depending on who's there, I mean, the guy that I think has the 4 guys that I expect to be on the board at 34. I think the guy with the highest ceiling is, and I'm going to butcher his last name, Kingsley Suamataia.
Yeah, the guy from BYU.
The BYU kid. I like Jordan Morgan. The one thing that worries me is that, and this is gonna make me sound like a total nerd, is his arms are short, which makes me concerned that he won't last at tackle. So if you're going to invest in a guy that you want to be your left tackle, I think you have to go with a guy that, like, I think Jordan Morgan is a stud offensive lineman. I think he's better than Kingsley, but I don't think Jordan Morgan I think unless he really improves on his overall game, because obviously he can't just roll out of bed tomorrow and have longer arms, unless he wants to go to like Bangkok and have experimental arm lengthening surgery. But I think you go with a guy like Kingsley, or you trade back, right? If you can trade back, I mean, and the thing about doing that, right? Like if you trade back from 34, you're probably giving him up. Somebody else will take him in that early to mid, depending on how far you trade back, which means you're probably looking at, and again, another last name I'm not even going to try to pronounce, the kid from Yale, Kieran Amaj-Dija, I don't even know how to say it. he's probably the guy you're looking at if you trade out of 34. And it really depends on who's willing to move up and what for. I can't, if both Mitchell and McConkey are gone at 34, I mean, who's really there that a team is going to like jump up the board for? Like, unless it's,
well, I mean, there's always players that people will jump up for. I mean, like there could be one of the cornerbacks that fall that
right,
a team really wants.
but I wonder, right, how far up is somebody going to be willing to trade that you're not moving back so far in the second round?
So I mean, so there's two targets and this is just kind of dreaming, team wise. I would love for the Patriots to try to find a way to move. They could move back with Philly and get 50 and 53 in the deal, and even if that means trading a future third as part of the deal, but getting 2 second-round picks from 34. And that way at 50 and 53, you got 2 wide open shots. Another option is,
but the thing about that, right? And I'm not gonna say I wouldn't do it for this reason. I think it's just it's something to talk about. If you trade that far back, now you're essentially punting on like a top 10 offensive line prospect, and you're punting on probably the top 13 to 15 wide receivers in the draft. So
I want to know that. I would probably maybe say like 10 to 12.
I mean, as of right now, Jalen McMillan is probably the 14th or 15th wide receiver on the board.
Yeah, but so if the 5 go in round 1, like who's going from 32 to 50? That 5 other receivers. You got Worthy, maybe Franklin, Coleman, Leggett.
Yeah, like all those guys
like,
probably go before Jalen.
They could, yeah, but like so 13 to 14, like now you gotta add another 4 or 5 guys. I think it's more likely like 10 to 12. But I get what you're saying.
So like that would be my concern with trading that far back. I mean, I get it because right, and I get it because you're getting you're trading an early second for a mid to a mid late second round pick, and your options are better there. I mean, given what they need, because Philly needs, according to Pro Football Focus, their 3 biggest needs in the draft are wide receiver, linebacker, and corner. Well, it says defensive back. It doesn't specify corner versus safety.
And there's going to be at least a few corners in the top of that second that are going to be attractive to teams. Lannister, I think his name. Yeah. From Georgia. There's Rainstraw from Mizzou. I think.
Can't think of his name. Sandra still from Michigan is probably going to be up there.
And I think that there will be at least one of these corners that probably fall into the second. Maybe like a Kool-Aid. Or Kool-Aid McKinstry. There's TJ Tampa.
Yeah, a kid from Iowa State.
This TJ Tampa. But I mean, like big picture, like I think there's a very realistic scenario, and I've been hyping him up lately. The Patriots wide receiver coach just spent the year in Washington. So when we talk about the need to hit on players, like this team needs talent. I could very much see a scenario where they're sitting there saying, okay, we're looking at this guy, like maybe we could take a Franklin or a Leggett in the early second. And, I think it's Hughes, I think his name is Tyler Hughes, the wide receiver coach. He's saying like, trust me, like Jalen McMillan is that guy. And I know, and we can get him at 50 because I think he's going to be probably a late round 2 or early round 3 guy. I know we can get him at 50. Let's trade back. We can still get a guy that we're really high on. And then you get another, again, you have to give up more than 34 for both these picks, but then you get another second round pick that at that point, like, just kind of looking at the board, you talk about that guy from Yale, the tackle from Yale. Patrick Paul is a guy that like we talked about was early mocked in round 2. he's now being like in PFF and other places in like a round 3. Like, if you like him, take him. Like, I'm not you could take him in the late second, or take best available at that pick. Even if that's defense, do it. Like, we need talent on this team.
Yeah.
And
So just because I just wanted to, I ran up a mock on PFF just to see. So in this particular case, aside from the top end wide receivers, so in this case, Harrison went 4, Adunze went 8, Neighbors went 9, which is I think a little unrealistic, but they're going to be gone in the top 10. Brian Thomas Jr. 16. Worthy 28, Mitchell 30, Leggett 33. So I traded 34 to Philly for 50 and 53. They took Ladd McConkey at 34. Troy Franklin went 37. Keon Coleman went 42. Roman Wilson went 47. So
yeah, I just did one too, and Leggett went 48 for me. But so let's just say at 50 they take Jalen McMillan. I know I'm higher on him than you.
I did the kid from Yale at 50, and then at 53 I went ahead and took McMillan.
Yeah, so I mean, we could reverse it, obviously. If they look at, obviously at that point you're going to be looking at Pittsburgh in LA, and they're at 51 and 52, you're going to say, where do we think that they could go? If they're going to take our guy, which positions they might likely to go. So you have to play a little bit strategy there. But, let's just say for the heck of it, they went McMillan at 50. Like, you're left at this point, and now this is, PFF, but like, we'll go off this, a Jatavian Sanders, like, he's could be a future tight end. I like his game. You could take the Kieran, again, we can't say his name.
Yeah.
That's the last name, from Yale. You can turn and you can go on the defense side of the ball. There's a Chris Jenkins out of Michigan. He's a big boy. There's Jonah Ellis from Utah. There's Isaac from Penn State, like on the outside of the ball. Javon Bullard. This one has Chris Broswell, but I don't think he's going to fall that far. Or at that point, like, you could always trade back again from 53 and try to recoup that, that third from last year, or, trade back again from 53 and add another pick in the third, 2 picks in the third round type of thing. I just think there's a lot of talent in the second and third round.
Yeah. So
and I think there's like a gap after like the mid-20s.
Yeah, the mock that I have for trading back, the closest team looking to trade up was Tampa, and they were willing to offer 57 and 125 was the best offer that they gave. Or it could be 57 and a fourth rounder. They would not offer a third rounder. If you wanted
57 and 125
and 125.
Yeah, so fuck it. I'll do that.
So
you move back another few spots, and like again, you got the same names, like
Yeah,
there.
if you wanted to recoup your third, you'd have to look at trading back to 63 with San Francisco. If you wanted to, now obviously this is based on, because I traded 34 in next year's third for 50 and 53.
Yeah,
but
so after trading back to 57, you take the kid from Yale, like the tackle. So now at that point,
I took him at 50, so he's not on the board in my mock. So
yeah,
I'd be taking McMillan.
Yeah. So in mine, we have the QB, we have the wide receiver, we have the tackle, and now you still have 68, you have 103, and now you also have 125 in the mix. So it's like, all right, you move down with these picks. You got 2 second-round picks. You have 2 4th-round picks, and still your 3rd-round pick, all for moving back in the second. And I just don't think the gap between the guys probably going to be there at 34 versus the guys that are going to be there at like 45, 50 range is going to be very big, especially in their eyes. Yeah. There's going to be some guys that they're going to say, on most big boards, they're probably ranked like in the 50s, but we have them ranked 33rd. We can slide back and still get them. And again, and now at 68, like you addressed your top 3 spots and you can go anywhere. Like at that point, you can go anywhere defensively, offensively. You can go interior line. You can draft another tackle or a wide receiver for all I freaking care. Just, they got to address needs, but to go back to the main point, 30 moving back from 34 just makes a lot of sense. And as much as Elliot Wolf has the notion behind Elliot Wolf is they like value. That's the Packer way. That was his dad and all that. I don't see them doing that at 3, but at 34, I do. If you could trade 34 and add another top 120 pick at the least, like I think it's probably worth it. And they can still get a really quality player.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the draft board is going to dictate a lot of things. I think even still, like just to kind of go back to the scenario you painted, I think even if based on where they're picking at 34, I think that the 2 guys they're going to target, if they're going to trade up for anybody, I think the 2 guys in a skill position they're going to target are Brian Thomas and Adonai Mitchell. However, I still think, and you kind of talked me into this the more when I thought about it, if you're going to go quarterback at 3, which obviously we all expect them to do, I think your first priority, because of the fact that you don't have a guy at left tackle, is you have to find the guy that you want to play left tackle. It could be, if somebody that you expect to go in that 15 to 22 range as an offensive lineman falls to the mid to late 20s, I think that's where you pull the trigger and you go get a left tackle that falls, a guy that you don't think is going to be there, and say, hey, look, like we got to protect Drake May or whoever you take at 3, McCarthy, whatever, right? We got to get this guy to protect him. We got to pull the trigger, and then you move up, from 34 to the mid to late 20s. And now you've got your left tackle and your quarterback both as first round picks with 5th-year options. Whatever year that is, 2029. So I think that's where I'd really like to see them go. I don't, I'd be really excited if either Mitchell or Thomas fell far enough that they pulled the trigger to move up into the late first for a high-end skill position. But for keeping especially where you're trying to develop a young quarterback, and I wouldn't expect anybody to start week 1 over Brissett, only because I think that, Elliot Wolf is cautious with bringing quarterbacks along. He's not one of these guys that's like, hey, like, I got to put butts in seats, and I just spent a premium draft pick on this player. He can't sit. I don't think he's one of those guys.
No.
And I'm a little old school when it comes to that, thinking that, I love the idea of having a rookie, especially a premium pick, a rookie quarterback sitting and developing for, minimum half the season, but obviously, and that's not saying like, even if he's ready week 4, wait till week 8. No, like you start the guy when he's ready to go. But like Justin Herbert was not going to start right away. He just got thrust into things because Tyrod Taylor got hurt in the 2nd game or 3rd game of the season, his rookie year. So
one quick thing to note on that is they can draft the guy, and by the time they have to make the decision whether to play him or not to start, if we assume that Elliot Wolf will stick around as the lead guy, he will have got his extension by then, because his contract expires this summer. So he'll get his extension. So, if he's around, he'll have a fresh new extension and not have to worry about like, Kraft being upset because they decide not to start him right away.
Yeah. So
he's not going to fire Wolf because they decide to sit Drake May for the first half of the season.
Yeah. And so, I think you got to protect the quarterback though, first and foremost. Unless, in this case, right, because they need a left tackle. If they'd already had an established left tackle, I'd say go wide receiver all day. But I'm still leaning go offensive line, because I think that there's enough talent in this draft that even if you made a trade where you're moving up from 68, because I think, especially for a guy like McMillan, like I think McMillan should still be there somewhere in the mid to late 50s, possibly early. He's a mid to late 2nd round pick kind of guy. So to move up from 68 to like 58 should only cost you like a future 3rd or 4th round pick Not a fourth, probably future third. And then you can go get a high-end wide receiver. Like I like McMillan, but I just,
Another trade partner option is Green Bay owns 42 and 58. So, at that point, you wouldn't have to slide back as much. Instead of going to 50, you go to 41 or 42 with Green Bay.
I don't know,
And they
but
also
I don't know if you're getting. I don't know as if you're getting those picks from Green Bay for that without giving up a future asset.
No, you would, but what I'm just saying, like, it's not just Philly that you could go that route where you want to get multiple seconds. Maybe there's a scenario where they go 34 and 68 and they get those 2 seconds, and then they would probably get a little bit more value later on. Like maybe you also get a 4th round pick. So it's 34, 68 and for 41, 58 in like the low 100s, something like that. I think is very, very possible for them, or mid one, a 4th round pick or something like that. But yeah, I mean, we'll wrap it up at that. Is they have endless options, and I just think there is not a talent drop off, but yeah, at the same time, a talent drop off after in like the mid 20s, where you say there is a shit ton of guys that are just in the same cluster of talent. I don't think the guy at 34, talent wise, is really much different than the guy at like 45 to 50. So if they feel like they can get good value and trade back and add another 120 top 120 pick or something like that, I'm all for it. I'm absolutely all for it. Because in the end, this team has a lot of needs, and we'll see if they hit on their picks and how their draft evals and all that and their decision making is. But they have a lot of needs, so having an extra pick, and a extra solid pick, is certainly not going to hurt them in the long run.
Yeah.
So, all right. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. We went a solid 90 minutes, basically, again, as usual.
That's what we do.
We'll be back. We'll be back next week. Hopefully JR is back. We'll see how it goes. We're going to have a little bit of a funky schedule over the next couple months, but we're going to try to make it work for everybody. Until next time, I appreciate you all listening and tuning in. And go.
Yeah,
go Patriots, go Celtics, and Bruins.
Go Boston sports. Celtics are playing tonight. Bruins are wrapping up their season. And we'll see.
Go Revolution. All right. Goodbye.
Good night, guys.